Hello everybody and welcome! I'm Justin from Playing Board Games, and today I am checking out the Nicholas Kory AMA on the Arkham Horror subreddit. I did this in the past when Duke, one of the other designers, I think also lead designer for Arkham Horror the card game, did an AMA on Reddit, and I'm here to do this one as well because there were some good things to learn, some good insight, and I like this because we get to learn stuff about the designers, we get to learn stuff about Arkham, and we also get to just like learn, and then also maybe find out things about them as a person as well, which is always really cool. So we're just going to go through here, check it out. At a certain point, I might just stop, I might just scroll forever, who knows? We're going to kind of just dive in and get this going. So, first thing here, does the team look at what the community is doing and saying in order to work on designs and taboo? Think about decks in ArkhamDB that speak about certain combos, mechanics, or power levels, blog posts that speak about what they liked or not in certain campaigns, or even posts in Discord, Reddit, asking recurring questions. P.S. I don't know if you were involved in the last round of Investigator designs, but it is great success in my opinion. Hey Valentin, I love all your work and put into the deck series. You know what? I do too. And I know you're here because you just commented in Twitch chat, but I also love all the work you put into all this stuff, and our two collaborations we did were very fun. Alright, and thanks, I was directly involved in the concept and development of the Drowned City Investigators and player cards. I'm happy you enjoy them. The batch of Investigators in the latest cycle are very interesting, very powerful, and apart from like George and Michael, are actually quite open. I know people say that Lucius isn't that open, but Lucius is probably the best on-your-own seeker we've ever had. And that is, such an interesting space to explore as a deck builder and a player. I'm currently playing Lucius right now, and I'll probably dive into more of this on a podcast with Daniel in the future. But there was such a big thing where I'm playing Lucius with Zoe, and it's really fun as Lucius to just not give a frick about anything. And you might think, yeah, but Ursula already kind of does that, right? But I mean, well, one, Lucius has a much better card pool than Ursula. And two, his ability is actually, I think, more relevant in terms of the on-your-own seeker. When Ursula is evading an enemy, she's just doing it because she has to. When Lucius is evading an enemy, he's licking his lips, rubbing his hands together, and looking at the clue, card, and resources he's about to pick up. Duke and I definitely try to stay plugged into community discourse over Arkham. We will look at what people are talking about, complaining about, praising, and use that often as a starting point or a reference point for designs we are working on, in addition to our own preferences, as well as larger goals for an expansion or for a class. Duke and I play a lot of Arkham, but we can never hope to match the number of games represented by people on ArkhamDB, Reddit, BGG, Facebook, Discord, and content creators across all platforms. Hey, that's me! All opinions are the ones we want to consider. All opinions are ones we want to consider, so if the community is saying that a certain deck, investigator, strategy, archetype is overpowered or underpowered or underdeveloped, we will often take that into consideration when discussing future designs. And a bit more context here. I want to know if they listen to what's being said in the community, especially when working on the taboo to bump or take down cards, because often it feels like yelling in the desert. Yeah. I mean, I definitely can, like, feel that sentiment where because I guess, like, the designers aren't in our Discord, but I know they're in the Mythos Busters Discord. And, but I imagine they don't engage too much because, I mean, they gotta be working on the game, right? So, like, that's most of their time for that kind of stuff. But I'm not surprised that they have their ear to the ground for, like, listening to things, because there's a lot of good insight and a lot of bad insight that you can glean from the community. I think what's very important is that they use it as like a jumping off point to start discussions, right? As what they're saying, as what he's saying right here, starting point or reference point for designs we are working on. Because I think the reality is that, like, I think the designers are doing a very good job as a whole of keeping things in a good place. And some of the changes, for example, let's flash back to the one I always bring up, the masks in Hemlock Vale. If the community had their way, those cards would be completely unplayable from the get-go. Can you imagine if the masks were released with the general community sentiment of costing XP? No one would play those cards. Those cards would be very bad. because they're already in a very good place. But what I like about it as well is that they pay attention to, for example, I would wager, I mean, I know that I've heard in the past that Nicholas really enjoys firearms-style gameplay, but I imagine that that's kind of where they've jumped off of hearing that maybe firearms need a boost, and I think that that is a very good version of all this. Shrink it. Not that one yet. Okay. I've really enjoyed playing Arkham Horror over the past decade and have two questions that come up often in conversation over the game. With the game being a living card game, the rules reference has begun aging. There are currently multiple repositories of rules, rulings, and FAQs. Are there any plans to create a revised rules reference that incorporates all these sources into a live document? Yeah, I imagine they've talked about it, and I imagine they want... I'm answering the question before just with my own thoughts on this. I imagine they want to, but shit like that doesn't just fall out of the air, you know? It takes a lot of work. I've really enjoyed the revised campaign sets as a way for new players to find and play the classic campaigns and share in experiences what older players have had. Is there a plan to make revised standalone scenarios compilation product? No, I doubt it. I doubt it. Some of the standalones have been enjoyable, robust, perennial go to my companion. New players either cannot find these products or have to pay premium to eBay scalpers. I don't know. I don't like this question. I feel like there's a dark energy to these questions. I don't know. I just feel like it. I don't know. I feel like there's a gotcha here. All right. The rules reference is indeed aging, isn't it? It's grown a bit cumbersome, and the printed one new players get on their Vice Court is now, what, almost 5 years old? We, that is Duke, myself, and our rules specialist Alex, are definitely aware of the situation. I will say that we are exploring alternative ways to present updated and consistent rulings to the players. We want playing this game to be easy and clear for everyone, and especially new players, and I unfortunately cannot comment on plans for upcoming products. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, like, this seems like a pretty thing. Like, I imagine they are thinking at it and they're poking at it, but it's not something that just happens, you know? It takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of work, especially because, yeah, if you think about it, what Duke and Nicholas are doing is that they're each also designing, and then Alex is probably also working on all the other games they have as well. So there's a lot of work that goes into this. And yeah, I can't imagine this ever happening just due to the fact that... we're about to go into a current rotation. Why would they print things that are about to rotate out? Ooh, this is a very interesting question. What's the process like for balancing the difficulty and timing of Doom ticking down for a scenario? Hey, great question. Both Duke and I have our processes for creating and refining scenarios, but for me, I always start with the expected default of 18. 18 rounds of Arkham feels like a solid starting point to me, and it breaks into 3 agendas in a number of different ways. So most of my scenarios start with an 18-round Doom clock and grow or shrink from there, and I largely leave it at 18 until I either realize the pacing of the scenario needs a predetermined shakeup, such as a short, early agenda that shuffles new cards in the encounter deck, brings out a big enemy, or introduces some wrinkle to the story, or until I have the play loop of the scenario largely determined and need to decide if the investigator should feel pressured or not, or if there needs to be Doom acceleration in the scenario. All these are things I consider closely as I go through developing a scenario. How did you arrive at the number 18? Play Destiny, math, etc. It just feels like a solid starting point. This is a great answer to a great question. I like this, because my number is 16, because that's what, like, Beard told me back in the day. 18 is a very good number, too, though. And that's actually, this feels like how I have been poking at the few custom scenarios, which I haven't worked on in forever, mind you. It's that, I like this, because it's just, you leave it until you determine that it needs to change, right? My harder thing is figuring out the, like, I feel like it's less about the Doom and more about the clue numbers. That's the thing that I'm currently having a problem with. So I really like this this insight, though. Hey, Nick. What's your greatest challenge when starting to work on this game? And what are some stuff you had to leave behind even if you really wanted to make it happen working on this latest expansion? Bonus, favorite investigator. Hello! These are amazing questions. Thank you for asking. My biggest challenge when becoming a designer on Arkham Horror was this idea that I've been spouting my ideas and opinions for 6 years on the podcast. Okay, we're gonna take this from again. I started to get distracted by chat. My biggest challenge when becoming a designer on Arkham Horror was this idea that I had been spouting my ideas and opinions for 6 years on the podcast, many of them terrible opinions, by the way, and now I was basically being told, alright, hotshot, think you can do better? Prove it. Maxine left some big shoes for both Duke and I to fill, and unlike Duke, I was brand new to FFG and to the industry as a career professional. I definitely still count my freelancer years as my learning years. The eyes of everyone who ever listened to an episode of Mythos Busters and still collected the game were on me, not to mention my former co-hosts. I definitely felt the pressure to perform. That is a very nice insight to have here. And again, this is why I like doing this, because it hopefully reminds the people who get a little bit snippy that these are just like, you know, humans like us trying to make it work. And this is very interesting, especially from like the idea of going from a content creator to an actual like designer, right? That would be like me suddenly being like, hey, Justin is designing the next expansion from Arkham Horror, the card game. I would feel unimaginable amounts of pressure to get that done. So I think that this makes total sense, and it's cool insight. As far as stuff I had to leave behind, it's no secret that the job at FFG was a dream job, but it came with things I had to give up, the podcast being far from the least of them. No longer being able to sit down and chat with my best friends about my favorite game every week for an audience of like-minded gamers was a hard thing to give up. Mythos Busters continued on admirably for a while, and I was happy to take my place among their listeners. Like many of you, I also am waiting eagerly to see where each of the hosts go after this extended hiatus. Bonus answer, my top 3 are Roland Banks, Luke Robinson, and Minty Fan. Agree, that's why I've been annoyed by people being so pissed at Blood of Thoth. Like, come on, some misses here and there are perfectly fine. When I see the people who are mad at Blood of Thoth, it makes me realize that they're new to Arkham. Because Blood of Thoth is a bad card. I agree. Like, it's not good. But there are much, much worse cards than Blood of Thoth. And if Blood of Thoth is causing that sort of reaction, I can't even imagine what that. I just know they're new because there are much worse cards in Blood. It's free. It costs nothing to put into your deck. There's literally like no downside associated with that. And I think that while it's not, like I said, it's not a good card, I think it's entirely playable, but just like very below rate, but still playable. It still will do something. All right. What is something you wanted to do with Arkham Horror LCG for a while, but can't get to us either due to balancing issues, pushback from FFG, or some or other reasons? This question is so good, but is also a marketing minefield. That is very funny. You're trying to trap me. We try a lot of ideas when working on Arkham, and no idea is ever really thrown out. Oftentimes, we feel this is close, but it's not there yet, so we shelve it and come back to it later. It is very, very difficult for me to answer this question without giving away something I shouldn't, so instead, I will spoil the next campaign. No, so instead I will pivot to something I wanted to do with Arkham for a long time and finally got a chance to do it. And that's dinosaurs, baby! When we were concepting Film Fatale, we talked about inspirations from the silent film era. I brought up The Lost World immediately, and I think I annoyed a few of my colleagues with how much I champions getting an Allosaurus in the scenario. I'm super excited for you to play this scenario. Hell yeah. Okay. Would I be anywhere close to correct if I said you guys are prioritizing parallel versions of Investigators whose original design you considered below par for whatever reason? Anywhere close to correct? Yeah, I think so. When developing parallels, we usually start with who do we really like but wish worked a bit different. Or sometimes even, I have a great idea for a parallel version of XYZ Investigator. Let's make sure they're in the next rotation. We don't look at, for instance, the list of investigators that player often rate as underpowered and pull from that list entirely, but ultimately we want to breathe new life into investigators that a lot of players may have slept on for a while, and that tends to mean revisiting ones that are generally deemed underpowered. This question doesn't really make sense to me, because if you look at it, there really is no priority for parallel investigators, right? It's like the 2 cycles, and then we had 2 oddballs in that cycle, right? Like, it doesn't really actually fit. This isn't good insight, because this makes total sense, right? Where it's just like, it goes with ideas we like, right? And you can tell from like the Monterey Jack, and then the Father Mateo one also seemed to fit because there was the cycle of Blessed Curse, but yeah. Yeah, so like it doesn't really fit. What's your favorite scenario, and what's a scenario you wish could be redone, and why? This is a great question. I'm excited to see the answer. Favorite scenario is probably Midnight Masks. I love everything about it. Its simplicity, the fact that it rewards multiple plays but can still be punishing, and the fact that it takes place in among so many famous locations in Arkham. I love push your luck scenarios and Mend My Masks did it first, and I still think it does it best. A scenario that I designed and wish I could go back and redo is probably Murder at Excelsior Hotel. I love that scenario so much, and I'm so proud of everything I did with it, but I think it got a second crack at it. I want to shorten the middle act a bit and devote more time to fleshing out the 10 different final acts. They're called down in the marketing copy. After all, they should feel really impactful elements of the narrative. I like this, because that's my beef with this scenario, because I think that, like, I wish I spent more time in the final, but a lot of these things you don't know until it's out there and in everybody's hands, right? And hindsight's 20/20. All right. In your design process, do you start from the top down or bottom up? Theme first or mechanics first? My approach changes based on the scenario. Sometimes I go in with a strong mechanical hook for the Grand Vault. I knew I wanted a puzzle box of shifting locations. And sometimes I go in with a thematic idea. For example, for Court of the Ancients, and started as inspired by the Kuromori boss fight in Shadow of the Colossus. Which one is that? Oh, yeah. Okay. That's the lizard you fight in the different levels in, like, the Colosseum. Okay. Though I tend to be a mechanics first designer, so oftentimes I'm an idea for a mechanic first and develop out from there. Court of the Ancients, is that the elevator one? I still have internalized all these. Grand Vault is the platform one. Court of the Ancient, yeah, it's elevator. That makes sense. It makes sense why the monster shows up so early, right? Yeah, why the boss shows up so early. Neat scenario. When designing a scenario, is there a player count that you design around and then make adjustments for higher or lower player counts? Or do you keep on all players count throughout the process? I'm very interested to see the answer to this question. I definitely design scenarios with the idea that it is most likely played with 2 investigators. It is not uncommon for me to read a playtest reports from groups who play with 4 investigators and hear feedback I didn't expect because I just hadn't taken the full group into account. 4 cards off the encounter deck each round versus 2 is a big difference. However, I also started my Arkham experience as a true solo player, and true solo still holds a special place in my heart. And most of my playtests are true solo. Interesting. So I was thinking about if a scenario is doable for a single player who's alone against the mythos. This should be some good insight to the people who say they don't design for true solo. That's very cool. When we get I feel like my wife grading one of her students' things. Circle this. When? Question mark. Something missing. Circle this. When's the question mark? When we get more information at current versus legacy, and we get the Blizzard soon TM. I don't know what they expected. He's like, oh yeah, of course. Let me just tell you all about it right now. They said late 2025, early 2026. I imagine we're going to get something with the next cycle. That's my guess. But it's just a guess. What are the design challenges you think you're going to face with the introduction of the rotating sets? Amazing question, and I think it is a good question. Rotation isn't something we've ever had to consider before now, so I'm thinking about player cards. There's always this thing I need to remind myself. Eventually, this card won't be in current anymore. In a way, it's a little freeing. We get to explore ideas and themes with a bit more creative expression, knowing that not every player will be using this card every time they play. But that freedom can be a double-edged sword, where sometimes we feel permitted to go in wild directions, then later sit down and actually think about how these designs will influence the current meta while they're in rotation. That's a great answer. I am actually personally very excited to see how design shifts with the current and legacy rotation. And I think that this is going to be, this is an answer that inspires a lot of excitement in me. Oh. If you could change anything about the game's framework or establish terms, what would you like to alter, if anything? I think this is a very cool question. Arkham is such a robust and versatile game already. It's hard to look at the bone structure and pinpoint anything about it in particular that I wish were different. Nothing comes to mind as so glaring that I wish I could change it from a fundamental level. But I will say to this day, I struggle with knowing the difference between taking and performing actions. Hell yeah. I don't even think about it, to be honest. super positive about it. I mean, it seems like a deck builder's paradise too, because now you can choose to build like current decks or legacy decks and explore those kind of things. I think that's going to be very cool to do. So no matter how much I play the game, no matter how much I've designed this game, I still have moments where I think, wait, did I take an action and perform an action? Did I take an action but not perform anything? I'm playing Lola, who has the performer trait. Does that mean I'm always performing? Okay, that last not has only happened twice, but still. Yeah, this is a pretty big thing. I'm not going to be over dramatic and call it an issue, right? Because I don't think it's an quote-unquote issue. But it is something that I think that is a little bit sticky, you know? And I think that, unfortunately, there was never really, like, consistency from the start of the game to where it is now for stuff like this. But I'm hoping now that there will be, especially with current. It might make it easier. I'm not sure, but that might just me be positing things that aren't really there. I don't even know the difference, and I'm not even going to try to learn the difference. It's above my pay grade. It's above my pay grade to know the answer to that. I don't care. Are there any game cards that have entered the pool which you thought would be great but have turned out to be flop, received mediocre use? Maybe something the community just hasn't figured out. I feel like the meme answer is Blood of Thoth, but to be serious, I'm constantly surprised at seeing the community value cards wildly different from me. I thought for sure Crowbar would be a slam dunk, but it was at least with a lot of seems fine comments. I mean, this makes sense because if what we just learned earlier about playing in Truce, like testing in solo, Crowbar is very good in that kind of environment, right? However, with that said, I also do think that the community was a little bit too soft on Crowbar. Whereas if I was a player when I released it, would have lost my mind. Time Roller, how's it going? Finally, a Guardian asset that lets you investigate with intellect. Hunter's Mark is another where I basically designed it in its final form and felt like I cracked the mysteries of the universe. Then it was revealed to the players and there was a lot of, oh, so it's a vicious blow that costs 1 experience and 1 resource. I agree. I mean, I agree with you. I agree with both of these things. I agree with both of these things, right? I think Hunter's Mark is a lot more than a vicious blow that costs 1 experience and 1 resource. I think it's like incredibly good. But the design, I think, on both these cards are really good. So I definitely see what you're saying on this. I really like Hunter's Mark. As for the cards that the players haven't figured out yet, I will say that my favorite Marion Tavares deck is one that people haven't really discovered yet, at least not that I've noticed, outside of the people I've told. I'm curious how long before people explore beyond Book of War and 1-2 Punch. I'm going to be honest, I actually think the 1-2 Punch Book of War is a cool Marion deck, but I think there's a lot more interesting things you can do with her. She's cool. I think that Marion is my favorite investigator from the cycle. She's very cool. What is your preferred way to organize all the cards? This is a fun question. Class order: Guardian, Seeker, Rogue, Mystic, Survivor, Neutrals plus Multiclass plus Specialist, Weaknesses. To Investigators and Signatures, level, resource cost. Interesting. I know I'm a bit of an anomaly by including resource cost, but when I'm throwing my cards at high speeds, I often see only through the top left corners. Nice. I don't know. So how does everyone here in chat sort their cards? I do this. I actually do this. This is exactly how I do it. I do Guardian, Seeker, Rogue, Mystic, Survivor, Neutrals, Multiclass, Specialist, and Weaknesses. I do Investigators and Investigators are in their own binder as well. And then I just sort by level, but I actually have no sorting within my level. I don't have any sorting within my actual level. I just sort them by level and just flip through the binder. And the reasoning for that is that I have so many games that I have to keep organized that I do not want to ever have to adjust the binder, you know? And honestly, it saved me so much stress to not have to adjust it, so. Class level type. eForest, do you further do your types by anything, or do they just go in there? Type as well? Yeah, I don't do type. I just do by level. Just do class level? Yeah. It's cool seeing everyone's different ways of doing it. Hey, Lucas, thank you so much for 20 months at the Golden Table. I appreciate your Bezos bucks. Thank you for doing an AMA. I agree. Honestly, huge props to both Nicholas and Duke for doing this. I think these are very good. And I like that it's kind of something to fill the space a little bit during the downtime of where we are right now in Arkham, where we're kind of like in between releases and kind of waiting for the next thing. All right. I got two questions, one small and one potentially more involved. What's your favorite class of Investigator to play? And for the Drowned City or Film Fatale, when you're doing initial development, do you have a mechanic that you were initially excited for but ended up not working out? As for my favorite class, I'm a true blue guardian, and have been since day one. I don't think that will ever change. And the second question, I actually answered something similar a little further up, but I will paraphrase. No idea is ever truly lost in Arkham. When we design something that, through testing, we realize isn't really working out, we don't toss it in a bin to never look at it again. We shelve it for now, with the expectation, explicit or otherwise, that we will revisit it in the future with an appropriately themed expansion to see if we can make it work this time around. Oh, makes sense. Happy Tuesday to you as well, House Slippers! And happy Sunday to everyone watching this on YouTube, or whatever day you are watching this. What is your favorite scenario design before you join the design team? Well, we know it's Midnight Masks. I would love to understand more about what inspires you when you find to be awesome design. I mentioned Midnight Masks is one of my favorites all above, but I'll touch on another one here for this comment. In Too Deep, that's a great scenario. Will always rank among my favorites. It translates one of my favorite scenes from The Shadow over Innsmouth, racing to the hotel to stay a step ahead of the violent mob, to the tabletop beautifully without being a full recreation. Despite having 15 locations and dozens of tokens to play at the start, it doesn't feel overwhelming. The play loop is engaging throughout, and there are some really strong moments that make for great stories later, like getting pulled back a row or two, or getting to the railroad station at the last possible moment, or, in my specific case, deciding to go back to the city with one of my partners to kill a VP enemy just a couple of rounds away from dooming out. Yep, great scenario. Hey Nick, love ya. Question, what are some of your favorite lore tidbits that we might not know about the Investigators for their backstory? Is Min a licensed notary public? Is Tommy allergic to Boston clam chowder? Does Sal swear that I has simply because he'd be too handsome without it? I wish I had insights that are unknown to the players, but I am constantly shocked at how much lore this community knows that I just had no idea about. What I will share that isn't really lore related, but in Marion Tavares' original design, her signature was going to be an ally, her best friend Annalise Taylor, but early in development that idea was scrapped because her play loop didn't require an ally, and it also made her too similar to the other event-focused Guardian Nacho. I think that's a good change. I know people shit on Marion's signatures, but I think those signatures are actually key to unlocking different Marion decks that people aren't relying on. So they lean too hard on other things. But it's one of those things that I think they're actually super key to unlocking Marion decks that people are just not using because they're just like, I'm going to play Beat Cop. I'm going to play Beat Cop. So I like the change they did with those skills. +2 on every event test is crazy. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. What have been your favorite or least favorite scenarios to design and why? I know it's cliche, but I love all my children equally. I don't think there are any that I didn't enjoy designing. However, I'll say ones that I had the most fun designing and still hasn't been played by very many people in the community. When you get to Sepulchre of the Sleeper, let me know. Yes, okay. I haven't got to that one. How many iterations and playtests are involved in creating new scenarios? I've often wondered how you all come up with everything. That's a great question. I'm going to pause the video for 1 second, though. All right. I often wonder it, too. There are often times when I'm drafting up a vision for a new product where I'm staring at a blank document and wondering, what am I going to do here? But that well continues to go deeper and deeper when I hit a roadblock and surrounded by other designers, especially Duke, who often have amazing insights of their own that help springboard my creativity back into action. As far as how many iterations a scenario goes through, it really varies. A scenario like Court of the Ancient had a few different versions, and started as much larger and more complex, but was slowly whittled down to its core identity and layout, and I think really shines for that. Whereas something like Sepulchre of the Sleeper basically jumped on a playtesting table in its final form, and we just had to adjust numbers up and down to get the desired experience. Spoiler alert, most of those numbers went up, hell yeah. If you could set an Arkham Horror LCG style game in another universe IP, which would it be? I have a lot of answers for this, most of which would probably get a lot of players nodding along and agreeing that it would be good, but I'm going to throw you the curveball of all curveballs. Ooh, what could it be? If I could create a new game using Arkham Framework, I would set in the amazing original science fiction setting of Decipher's old, long out of print CCG Wars. No, not Star Wars, just Wars. An awful name for what grew out one of my favorite sci-fi settings of all time. Let's check this out. The Wars trading card game. Yeah, everything that's showing up is just Star Wars. That's so funny. No, I want Wars. Yeah, there is the wiki article. Yeah, that's all there is. But I want to see, like, cards. I want Wars. Hey, Nick, can you speak at all regarding the LCG's team process and the developing of the narrative of the Drowned City with the Aconite books and the MUM team, Mansions of Madness? Did you and Duke... There we go. No, it's all good. The Wars trading card game. Whoa, okay. Neat. Robot hand. I wonder if there's a mod of this on Tabletop Simulator. It'd be fun to be able to do that. I mean, I like the layout. The cards also look pretty alright. Neat. Yes, I did start recording again. Thank you. Did you and Duke break out the main story and then the books were developed separately? Was there an overall story developmental meeting? How did this expansion get developed into a multi-pronged event prior to release, and what did you find beneficial hindering in the process of result? This is an interesting question. Asmodee's FFG parent company had a department called Franchise Development. It's a group of incredibly talented and knowledgeable people who are devoted to bringing in the great things we do in our games and expanding them into other mediums. If you attended Gen Con last year and went to the Arkham room, you likely met one or more of these fine folks. Don't want to back... No, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. We had story meetings early on between the design team and other internal teams at FFG, like senior management in the Arkham Story Group. Drowned City was always the first expansion. We were meeting regularly with the franchise development team, talking about our plans, the expansion's narrative, providing them with details and events of the plot. It's like this. I'm going to just flash back earlier in this video when we talked about the we want to make our, like, why can't we update the rule, get the rules reference updated, and they're like, we're working on it. Just to shows like how much of their time is probably also spent like in meetings, like any other job out there, you know? It's just like, oh, I have a meeting this afternoon, and then I have a meeting about that meeting that I had yesterday, you know? Not that that's bad, but I think once again just provides context that these people have more to do at their work than just make the rules reference guide or work on Arkham. I think in the last AMA, Duke said most of his time was actually spent writing up art descriptions for artists for the cards. Franchise development then took these details and did what they do best, work with the other parts of Asmodee to create tie-in content. We knew that bringing Cthulhu to Arkham Horror was going to be a huge, noteworthy event, the effects of which would reverberate through the mythos, and franchise development leveraged their resources to capitalize on that opportunity by expanding the scope of the story beyond simply what we could do with the card game. Really cool. Nice insight there. Unsure if you can/want to answer this question. As someone who likes to work on my own custom content, I wanted to ask, what is the most important tip you can give? in the sense of what to lock down first when making a scenario. Would you say it's better to focus on the gameplay, story, or something else? I think it kind of depends, right? Arkham is this unique blend of narrative depth over a robust mechanical experience. The versatility of this game is such that it feels like it can accommodate a wide array of situations, and it can. My advice is to you is to, as much as a window into my own philosophies as it is a way to approach designing for Arkham. Focus on mechanics. Don't skip on story, and definitely know the story you want to tell when you set out to design a scenario, but at the end of the day, and my approach has always been that even if the story is light or leaves me wanting, as long as playing the game is fun and engaging, then it's a success. I sit down with my deck and play a card game. After all, that's the experience I'm looking for. Yes! 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 I love that answer, if you can't tell. I agree. I think that, like, the story is good, but you'd be surprised the amount of story you can tell in this game without actually telling a story. Love that answer. Is there any interest or movement inside of Fantasy Flight to make an official app for the rules, reference, and campaign guide information? That seems like a handy way to roll out official updates. This can't just, like, can't just happen. We're currently looking at ways to expand and modernize the way we present rules to our players for Arkham Horror, but I can say an app is not in the works. Yeah, makes sense. There's always ArkhamHorror.com. Have you seen this website? Just for everything that's related to Arkham files. Latest Arkham news. Look how much shit there is. There's a lot of stuff here. This is crazy. Yeah, a lot of the comic stuff. Go by FFG. Yeah, Drown City. Designer Journal. Yeah, pretty cool. Okay. Hello. I love the return to. Uh-oh. I know where this question's gonna go. Could those be new investigators for Arkham? There's definitely a chance, yeah. I know where this question's gonna go, and I already know the answer. I love the return to sets for spicing up campaign, spice the campaigns up through playthroughs. Is there any hope of future return tos? Thanks. Hello. I cannot comment on future products, but I can say that there are no plans to revisit the return to expansions at this time. I think we just have to understand, and I understand that the 5 stages of acceptance do take some time, but the return tos are dead. They're in the ground. We're not going to see them again. I think we just have to accept that and stop asking. We have to stop asking because they're gone. Especially with how the cycle is about to happen. So amazing patience here. But as for spicing up your campaigns, try challenge runs. Try changing your collection. Try new investigators. That's the way to do it as well. The only return to stuff we'll ever see again is reprints of existing cards and newer sets. I agree, and even then I think that probably won't happen either. This is a text answer to Link at least. Yeah, but we kind of already had that ages ago. Any chance for more plug-and-play character packs or pre-built character cards list for those of us who don't have time, proclivity, or brain Am I having a stroke, or did this sentence have a stroke? Brain space, that's what it is. For deck building, I love the adventures. This is great. Okay, you know what? We'll pause. We'll pause this. I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to read this one, and then we'll get to you on that one. In the past, for fellow investigators and in release articles, we try to highlight great cards to include certain investigators, but I can see expanding on that in some way. Honestly, I think what they should do, and this is me being a little bit biased because it probably would benefit me, but they should reach out to some content creators when a new cycle is released, and they should have those content creators like make a deck list for it. They did this back in the day with Lord of the Rings when that came out, because I made a deck list for that back in the day. And I think something like that could be really cool. However, beyond that, to not even add more work to FFG to get that moving, but to even just this question right here, there are a lot of sources online on ArkhamDB. And we had Valentine earlier earlier in this video. We also have deck lists on our channel, and there's a bunch more out there as well. Okay, let's pause the video for a second. I know there's been talk about the new Legacy current environment system coming into effect at the end of the year. Is it safe to say that once in its full swing, we can expect around 2 to 3 campaigns and Investigator expansions to be printed at any given time? See ya, Arkham Librarian. I can't really give any details of this at this time, but I can say some things will be clear in the future. I know that's super unhelpful, but it's the best I can do. Yes, that sounds about right. Is there any archetype mechanic or playstyle that you want to design more of? That's a cool question. Like, deep down, maybe you yearn for more big money or upgrades or ally powers, but for balance with theme, you can't justify it. The scenarios are just dynamic as the player cards. What's your favorite scenario mechanic / gimmick? Yes, can't talk about it though because I tend to design for things I want to design more of, but I will say it's always fun to explore new mechanics and what they can do to breathe new life into old archetypes. Yay! It's really divisive, and admittedly I was pretty negative at first, but the explore mechanic from the Forgotten Age is one of my favorite mechanics. I was very happy to revisit it with Monterey Jack's challenge scenario, Relic of the Past, and I'm proud of what I was able to do with it. I want them to revisit mechanics more. I would love to see a new take on Explore. Are there any plans to address the core set or the revised core set's role in the upcoming rotating format? A lot of players are concerned that the core set has such a deep lack of stable functionality for each class that it will result in a rotation format where every Investigator expansion needs to essentially reprint the staples. What the hell? Has a deep lack of stable functionality for each class? I mean, I know obviously they can't answer it. There's no answer there. This is really only true for Mystic and Rogue, right? Like, Rogue is the one that has the worst core set. Mystic has Rite of Seeking 2 now, but they don't have an upgraded kill spell, which is kind of the issue, right? But for each class is crazy. Guardian is fine. Seeker is eating the fucking cake. Survivor is also very good in the core set. So, but I mean, like, Survivor lives in their Investigators, so. But yeah. As I mentioned, my hope is that they focus on the Investigator starter decks as an additional way to kind of be what Hearthstone does, where they have like a format that changes, like a core set that changes. I guess Survivor lacks recursion in core. No, they have the best recursion ever printed in core. They have scavenging. Like, that's the strongest recursion ever printed, which is insane. Like they've always been the recursion class, even from core set back in the day. And I mean, it has all the neutral stable. I don't know what this person's talking about. It's just Rogue that needs to be boosted, and Mystics. I think Rogue and Mystics. Hi, Nicholas. 2 questions for you, if possible. With the game always getting bigger, is there ever a time when someone designs a card or plot point only to go, oh shoot, we already did that? I'm excited to see the answer to this. How did you get into designing for Arkham Horror LCG? Did you work your way up to it, or did you get hired from the outside? Absolutely. The number of times I've designed a card I've forgotten about only for Duke to say, that's just XYZ or vice versa, is definitely more than 0. Happens at least once per expansion, I think. I got my start on Arkham Horror as a freelance designer. Early on in Arkham's life, I was making custom scenario content, posted on BGG and Reddit and such, and generally getting in front of people. I was also friends with Maxine at the time, and we chatted on Discord fairly frequently, so when FFG began considering hiring a freelancer for a standalone scenario, she reached out to me for pitches. I pitched what would eventually become the murder at the Excelsior Hotel. That got my foot in the door, and I continued to do freelance work in the tabletop industry for other games before applying for a game design job in 2022 and getting hired for Arkham Horror. I think Nicholas has been a great boon to the design team, and I'm excited to see what he designs in the future. In my experience, getting a job in the game industry comes down to 3 things. So this is true for all industries. Do a lot of the thing you're doing. Do the job that is you want to do in that industry, and network. You cannot overestimate how important networking is to getting a job in the industry that you want. Because most of the time they're going to hire the people that they know, or like that they know from someone else. That, and I'm the same. I also don't like networking, but it's so important. I mean, I'm already experiencing it. I kind of live in a box when it comes to my own content creation, where I don't like to like interact with other people. I like to just make my content and have fun doing it. But I've recently started to like, you know, do the whole networking thing, and we've seen what it has done. Like when I got to do that article for the actual for their website, bro. Right. So like, it's just networking is so important. If you want a job in that industry, do the job that the industry asks. Consume a lot of that industry and network. This is like such important advice for any job ever. Blood of Thoth. Yes, Blood of Thoth. Blood of Thoth, it's bad, but it's not even that bad. It makes all right. Ooh, this is an interesting one. What are your other favorite board or video games, and have they inspired you in any way while designing Arkham content? This answer could easily balloon to the longest of the whole thread, so I'll keep it to the games I've been playing lately that have risen to among my favorites. World of Warcraft is and always will be a staple for me, even if my activity in it waxes and wanes. Elden Ring Night Rain has been scratching the Souls-like itch for me these last couple of weeks. Normally when I want to play Souls-like, I just go back to Bloodborne or Dark Souls 2. Oh, Dark Souls 2, Andy, let's go. I'm not, Dark Souls 2 ain't my favorite, but if there's a lot of people when they love Dark Souls 2, they love Dark Souls 2. Night Rain has 3-player co-op, so it's my recent go-to. Blueprints has been stealing my time and is very engaging, exploration puzzle miss-like. It's not really new, but Brotato is a great game. Brotato is a great game. It's a time waster that was made for me with its absurd items, jump in and jump out action, and infinite number of character builds. That official article was great. I feel so privileged that I got the opportunity to write it, and I'm happy to hear that you found it helpful. These are honestly also like incredible games. Brotato's very good. You should play Brotato. I'm woefully behind the times for tabletop games, but Final Girl the Grizzled, a great game. Compile and Twilight Imperium will always have a spot on my table. I've actually never played Twilight Imperium. Final Girl's on my list to check out. Great answer, great insight. I feel like, so one of the first things I always ask someone when I meet them is what's their favorite movie. I feel like you can learn a lot about a person by asking what their favorite is of some sort of media they consume. And I like hearing what people's favorite games are. Thanks. What was your favorite artwork from the last campaign expansion, and do you have a faction in the upcoming scenario you're most excited for? My favorite scenario is a treachery art for Cosmic Omen. Is that the eye? I think sorry, you guys shouldn't see that. I think that was actually when I was playing with Daniel. He mentioned that he loved that art. That's got to be the eye, right? It is. Yeah, look at that. John, my favorite art. What's my favorite art for the new one? Is this one. It's my favorite art for the new cycle. There's a lot of good shit. For Film Tell, it'd be lying if I said I was more excited for anything more than the dinosaurs. As a lifelong dinosaur nerd, getting my favorite carnivore, the Allosaurus, into Arkham is a dream come true. Hell yeah. Favorite story by Lovecraft? The Shadow over Innsmouth and At the Mountains of Madness. Both alternate as my top pick. Hi, Nick. Thanks for taking the time. What's an investigator or player card design you're particularly proud of and why? Same question, but for encounter and scenario cards. It's hard for me to find a player card I'm more prouder of than Memories of Another Life. I remember that writing that card, then messaging Duke saying something to the effect of, so I have this crazy idea. I to design things that are much more vanilla, I guess. I love the bread and butter of Arkham, so I often design along those lines. Cards like the Luger PO8, Hunter's Mark, correlate all its contents. These are the kind of cards I tend to design. Memories definitely felt like it were the unexplained experiences of a parallel Nicholas Kory leaking into my own mind. That's cool. For scenario cards, the Dromaeosaurus from the upcoming film Fatale is such a simple yet funny enemy design. They're generally easy to deal with, but if they catch you unawares, they can be a real pain. Are those the guys that hop out at you? They like attack you and then like retreat? These idiots. Yeah. After it engages, you must just choose and discard a card from your hand or it attacks you. And then it has elusive. Great card. Great design. Yeah. I see why he likes that one. It's a cool card. I know we're all Arkham focused, but you can't call them a future product. I just want to say I'm very happy for the latest as a reason behind the new Mansions of Madness DLC. Hell yeah. Thank you all for coming out today. Nicholas had a great time answering all your questions, but sadly I must drag him away now. Well, we're going to keep going for a bit. Wow, we even got a bolded excellent question. See them they're trying to get a slip up here. Hey Nicholas, did you know in the Lovecraft's 1928 story The Last Test, there is an entity named the Nemesis of Flame, which is eerily similar to Cthulhu? And there's also The Fire Vampires by Donald Wandrei, written in 1933. Other than that, I don't have any questions. Just hope that maybe one day the team will do a cycle of the LCG with Hyperborea, with Sisugwa, Ithaqua, Yohonda, Realm, Shakakorth, the Rooms of Comorium. Interesting comment. To answer your question, no, I was not aware. I've read The Last Test. Cool though. I mean, like, there's a lot of deep lore that goes beyond, like, there's Lovecraft, but then also the other stuff. There's a lot of good writing that goes beyond Lovecraft. And it's funny, because I'm such a big fan of Arkham Files and, like, the mythos, but I actually don't like Lovecraft's writing, personally. So there's a lot of cool stuff you can find elsewhere. Between scenarios and counter cards and player cards, is there a category you find easier or harder to design? Is there a category you find more fun to design? They're equally fun hard, yeah, that's the thing. But honestly, it all depends on the mindset I'm in, and oftentimes I like to alternate my design sprints between scenarios and player cards to keep giving my brain something new and exciting. Just as with any creative process, giving yourself time between drafts often produces the most refined version of something, so I try not to work on the same thing day in and day out. Yeah. Why are Guardians the best class? And with Rogues eating their primary fighter role in the last few expansions, how do you balance giving what used to be the primary fighting class more things to do while maintaining their original flavor? Excellent question. Guardians are the best because they're tanks and support, which everyone knows are the two best roles in any team game. I mean, it is true. They're pivotal, right? As for balancing the Guardian class identity while giving other classes strong answer to enemies, at the end of the day, I believe that every class should be able to handle every facet of the game as long as it feels true to their class identity. Something we also call the color pie when we talk about it. It took 9 years for Guardians to get a hand item that lets them use combat to discover clues, whereas Rogues got lockpicks in Carcosa, which is the second cycle, Carcosa. Anyway, lockpicks work for Rogues because they get clues in a very roguey way. Use agility, but you can break the lockpicks if you're not careful. Crowbar, the Guardian lockpick, is not flashy, it's not exciting, and won't let you smash the scenario with your impressive tempo plays, but it does let you get clues as a Guardian in a very Guardian way, slowly and consistently, while still playing to your strengths. So ultimately, that is what I use to balance the classes. I want every class to be able to be played solo and still come out ahead in most situations, but I never want a player to feel like a class they're playing is different from a class of their Investigator and the cards in their deck. Nice. Just gonna see if there's any interesting questions here. Seekers and Guardians. Will future releases taboo lists will they have in the current format attempt to curtail, at least bring some equity between these classes? So, I have a lot to say about this that goes beyond the question. Seekers, yes, are very strong because they win the game by getting clues. But let me ask you this. Have you seen a Seeker without a Guardian? Who comes crying when the Seeker isn't, like, when the Seeker draws an enemy and then things run out? Yes, Seekers can build decks that solve problems, right? It's possible, but I think that as a whole, solving enemies when they show up is a very important thing to do and can really just bog everything down if they're not able to kill enemies, right? So it's one of those things where I feel like this statement on Seekers versus Guardians, I think you're just you're bad. Is what it comes down to. I think you're kind of just like Seekers haven't really gotten good broken stuff in comparison to some of the other classes in the last little bit. I know people say the Myconids are strong, but I think the Myconids are a combo piece, and they get good when you build around the combo, right? But Seekers haven't had a miss yet. Or worse than a character's Seeker. Man, I don't know. You're wrong. I got you on this. I got to say on this, buddy. We played TDC without a dedicated monster killer. Yeah, and Guardians are still the best at killing monsters. The Arson's game prior to his play, you can hire as much. I think Guardian has amazing tools, like it to the earth. Yeah, it's just basically an answer we saw above. Is there any card other than the shotgun in the game now? Oh, this is a filing. That's so funny. That's funny. That's a reference to, as apparently here are Mythos Busters and the love of shotgun, which I don't know. I'm not in on that joke, but it is still, you gotta love it. Blocked user. I blocked this guy. Should we see what his comment is? What his question is? Now I see why they blocked them. I can see why I blocked them. The first line, I was like, no way, no way. Is there any chance we get official print runs of fan-made content? No! There is no chance that is going to happen. Absolutely none. They didn't even answer it. Alright. Topic 1. Was the Drowned City designed to be an easier side to potentially replace Adonij's Legacy as the entry campaign for new players? No, I'm going to say they can't answer this one. Was the switch from designing something like Hemlock Vale to the Drowned City difficult, challenging process? Topic 2. What was the thought process with specials cards? Was it a mixture of theme need to help supporting existing investigators that were weaker? Were they designed with the future investigators in mind? Eyeball emoji. Bonus question. Conflict of interest aside, would you still be a Mythos Buster podcaster if able? Do you miss it? I'm a new listener catching up on all the earlier episodes. Were they where you're very much present? I imagine, man, it's got to be tough to stop. So I gotta imagine the answer is yes on that. I would hate to stop making content. I'd love to like work on something like Arkham, but it would be tough to give up this because I love doing this, and I imagine that Nicholas loved doing Mythos. It's tough, but I'm happy he's working on the game. I'm happy I'm not working on the game because I probably would be a shitty designer. Alright, Drowned City was definitely designed to be more approachable than the average campaign. We knew that having Big Daddy C, that's Cthulhu by the way, on the box would bring in a lot of new players who maybe hadn't collected the whole game up to that point, or maybe even new players who only had the core set and we didn't want to alienate those players. We accounted for this by building in a lot of challenging optional objectives in the campaign, which was very cool. We counted for this by building in a lot of challenges. Sorry, after all, can you really say you explore an alien city if you've only got 7 glyphs and 1 artifact? I'd argue no. Amen. The pivot from Hemlock's level of difficulty to TDC's approachability was challenging, but not overly so. Once we knew the direction we wanted the campaign to go in, it was easy to rally all the designs around that while still providing a series of unique and engaging scenarios. That's an incredible answer. Specials cards are born out of the desire to make your choice of investigator and the growth in the game have a new layer of meaning beyond just class identity. We definitely worked hard to making sure every investigator had at least one exciting option among the specials cards, and we wanted a mixture of new support for existing playstyles like Nose to the Grindstone, big flashy capstones like Name Your Price, and things that encourage crazy new plays like Memories of Another Life. They weren't really designed to lift up Investigators, originally thought of as weak, but we did want to provide everyone with something exciting regardless of the Investigator's base power level. Hell yeah. Yep. Hello, will there be any chance in the return of Return to scenarios to make a return? No. Even in a different capacity, along the same lines, your team ever consider releasing new standalone campaigns that feature the use of specific existing counter decks from existing content? I guess the pack they need to... Sorry, did I miss a question about... this? Oh, let's look at this. Let's read this one. We'll come back to you. This one wasn't answered, but I am curious. Has always had an affiliated... Nathan, thank you so much for your Twitch Prime. 4 months of the Golden Table. How's it going? Hope you're having a good Tuesday. FFG has always had an affiliated sleeves department, but there have never been Arkham-specific sleeves. Elder Sign, Faction Sign, Yellow Sign, or even generically horror theme that Magic players would still use. Whatever your market researchers are telling you, they're wrong. Question, how do I hack their... no, they're mostly having fun here. They're not being serious. I hate clicking this Prime sub every month. It's a shame that they make it hard for you to give out the free money, but I understand why, right? They don't want you to do it, but they really should just let you do it, like automatically, right? This is interesting. Did your team ever consider releasing new standalone campaigns that feature the use of specific existing encounter decks from existing content? I guess the pack would need to highlight which deluxe you would need. So, like, I think this is interesting, but I think that the way of going about it would be... instead, where it's like it has a base version, but it says you could switch this cycle, you could switch this counter set with this one for this one, this one for this one, but there would need to be a way to play it outside of the box. I've answered the return to question a few times, but your questions about encounter sets gives me an opportunity to add some context. In general, FFG is not interested in releasing products that are expansions to expansions. TK are Arkham friendly to new players who want every product to only require the core set. The Return Tos were a fun and engaging product line, but there are currently no plans to continue developing in that direction. If I gave any sort of hopeful answer, I would. Ooh. I don't think Backpack's coming back, maybe. But yeah, like what other game... Like, every time I look at this, I look at Magic the Gathering, for who in my opinion, for up to about a year and a half ago, were like the de facto, this is the one I look at basing everything off of. And is there an there's no Magic expansion that requires, unlike, you require something else to play. Like, you just take your cards and play with it. This is Nicholas Kory, one of the two designers. Interesting. I'm kind of curious of how the team curates what sources of inspiration feel appropriate. Obviously, Lovecraft's original works are quite different than many of the pulpy stories they would inspire. This is totally fine, but I imagine to draw the line between broad and inclusive horror and Arkham horror somewhere. Were there ever ideas pitched that some people were excited about but ultimately felt irreconcilable with the game's core identity? Just been a pitch off the Knock of the Dead. That's a great question. We are often concerned about our products feeling like Arkham, especially when we delve into more original narrative ideas. Luckily, we have a team of FFG of designers and writers from different games called the Arkham Horror Story Group. That's cool. We didn't know this. Those people are very familiar with FFG's Arkham mythos over the years and provide wonderful feedback at multiple points in expansion's development, as early as the story outline and his latest final review. Cool. Were you interested in Lovecraft's horror before starting to work on Arkham? Oop. Can we have more Barkham? You don't want to ask me that question. You'd have to, for the glyphs, you'd have to ask Duke, Glyphs, or Tally. I feel like we're reaching the end of this, though. What are your favorite archetypes? Card? Where do cards work well? Sounds like a Johnny to me. I hope somebody asked if they view the game as a horror game, an action-adventure game, or something else. I'm going to tell you right now, the answer is probably it depends on the campaign you are playing. For example, Innsmouth and Hemlock Vale feel very different theme-wise, and I think that carries over to that. Hey Nick, appreciate you doing this AMA. I know you can't speak about upcoming projects in detail, but I want to ask you about upcoming projects in detail. I love the new box model for many reasons and would never want to go back to the monthly scenario pack model of old, but one thing I miss about the old release schedule is having an excuse to talk about play Arkham on a more frequent basis. The current release schedule leaves long periods of content drought between the campaigns. So my question is, do you and the rest of Arkham team see this as a problem, and if so, is there any plan you can tell us about future plans to address this? I can say with confidence that everyone at FFG loves when players and content creators have multiple reasons to talk about Arkham throughout the year. That said, I cannot talk about any future plans. Obviously, this is an answer I expected to see there. I appreciate that you probably can't give a precise answer, but you feel the game still has longevity from both a commercial and design space perspective. The design pool for this game is crazy. I cannot say things about future plans. Copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. That's why I'm here, so I can be like, stop asking about future plans. They can't say anything, because he can't say that. But the only PR team we have here at Playing Board Games is me, and I called a certain group of Arkham fans idiots today in my Discord channel, so so we fly a little bit looser here at Playing Board Games. But yes, I don't know. There's no secret that Arkham is designed more than a year ahead of what is released. We got plenty of ideas. It is a very deep pool. This is assuring. So all we gotta do is just keep buying, and then hopefully the game stays in print. Most people asking questions and they may want to know about future plans. It is true. It is true. I think this has been a good gaggle of variety questions, though. But I do imagine a lot of the AMA people are like, hey, especially with the current and legacy, right? When you move from big fan designer of the game, what did you most fear you'd fuck up and ruin things for everyone else? This is an interesting question. Can I say the game as a whole? Because it was definitely the game as a whole. That's funny. For a more satisfying answer, it is definitely the player card pool. I know from being a player for the game's life, the balance is a very, very, very tricky thing to get right. Some cards seem like such great designs in vacuum, looking at you, trench knife, but then in practice, they just don't really work out. I think that's a very fair statement. See also Blood of Thoth. And now that's a card slot for a class that is taken up with very limited use cases. On the flip side, some of the cards seem fine, but in actuality end up defining the meta probably more than they should. Cough, Milan, cough. It may seem like a boring answer, but when a card is designed and is released and the fan response is, this seems good, not amazing, but I think a few decks of works in, I'm cheering because I did it. I made a balanced card. And I've often said that, like I said, Hemlock and Drowned City seem very balanced. Go away. We have that one. Interesting. I've noticed a lot of the designers at FFG have earlier credits as playtesters. What is the process to go from playtest to designer? Or where are these designers that FFG brought on to iron things out? A lot of our designers help playtest our games. We have an ongoing event called... Sorry, one second. Called Playtest Friday, where the whole idea is to play and give feedback on the projects other designers are working on in the studio. So at times, you'll see designer names under playtest credits, though honestly this is an initiative we're moving away from, largely to make sure the people we hire for playtest work are being appropriately highlighted. However, this would be a question better posed to Duke, as I believe he has followed the trajectory exactly. He started as a playtester, then became an intern, and is now working on Arkham. It does happen, but I can't comment on the process, unfortunately. I think some people are too fussed about card balance to co-op games, so if something is unbalanced, people cannot use it. Cyclopean Hammer. They should make interesting thematic cards and let them be used as they are used. Miranda, no offense by this, but I'm glad you are not in the design philosophy for this, like as one of the design team for this game. Because I think that is true to an extent, but I think overall is a slippery slope that leads to bad things in the future. They should make thematic and fun cards, and I think they have been making very interesting and thematic cards. But I do think that cards like Cyclopean Hammer in the long term are problematic, because then eventually, let's just say, for example, if things never rotate out, why would you play anything else than Cyclopean Hammer? And you might not see it. You might not agree with that. But because you don't have the perspective to understand that, I think that that is why it's very important to understand why that perspective is important to have. All right, let's see what the answer is. That's my point. A lot of people don't use Cyclopean Hammer because it's boring. Yeah, but a lot of people do use Cyclopean Hammer because it's strong as hell, right? And they only use Cyclopean Hammer because it's strong as hell. So if we're only going to cater towards the people who don't use Cyclopean Hammer because it's boring, we're going to end up chunking people out of the game who do use it because it's powerful, right? It's very important to find that balance, and that's something that they need to hit with every box. It's not just like paint with one brush and everything is done the same way. They have to hit multiple different play styles, players, play groups, and I think that's very important. Just recently got into the game and I love it. I wanted to ask if we'll ever see more return to boxes or even reprints for some older products like Carnival of Horrors. No! Sadly, I cannot give information on upcoming products, but I can say there are no plans to reviews or return to products at this time. Arkham Horror, people really want return tos. I mean, I understand it. They feel sad that they can't have the nice boxes, right? But, what can you do? It's just cardboard that one day will turn into waste. To be honest, they want them now, but not when they were in print. Necrotoaster, it's so true. So true. Arkham Horror is my all-time favorite game. I'm starting some fan-made campaigns to keep scratching the itch. What is the opinion of devs on fan-made content? Game campaigns obviously inspire those fans. Does it go both ways? No. I'm very curious about this answer. I don't know how much the Return Climber would die if Backpack 2 would appear in revised core. I think Backpack 2 should die. I agree, Marinda. It's the vocal minority, not the majority. 100%. Hi, so glad to hear this is your favorite game. Thank you so much. Fans like you will make this game great. Well, fans like you and fans like those who make amazing fan content you're asking about, I can only speak for myself, but I'm confident Duke would agree. Our opinion on fan content is that it's great, and you should keep playing it, keep making it and playing it. There we go. This is the answer I expected. However, as designers of the game, we actively try to avoid playing fan-made content. It is important that the products we present to you with our own creations through and through, and that means eliminating the threat of influence from fan-made designs, even if the influence is subconscious. Adding after the fact, but collaboration is something we pursued in the past and are open to pursuing again in the future in the form of hiring freelancers for standalone scenario designs. Good answer to this. Now we have another thing we can point this to. Show the risk of copyright infringement? Yeah, and that's what he means. Like, that's basically what he's saying here, right? Eliminating the threat of influence. Like, threat of influence sounds like it's a bad thing, but to the legal team it is, right? Had this one. Just one thing about the game would it be? I wish I had a more insightful, exciting answer than nothing. Maybe make it more affordable. I mean, I agree with that, but there's not much you can do about that on the design side. I think we've reached the end. Okay. I'm kind of having fun reading the questions that are just same answers as always. If someone is looking up for tarot cards, there are alt versions on Etsy. That's really that's really good to know. Necroto, I should look those up. I should make that as a video. That seems like a really good thing for me to actually put out there for people to be like, hey, check this out. Let me just write that down. Arkham tarot cards on Etsy. I don't know if I'll list video for Thursday. Maybe it can be that. When designing a set, how far back are the designers going in terms of assumption about what players have access to? This is honestly part of the nicest thing about current. They don't have to think as hard. Will there be any formal acknowledgement of when a set is no longer considered modern enough to be part of the current meta? And if not, how are fans supposed to know what older product we don't need to hunt down in order to stay current with the present set of the game? So I'm going to wager that when we get a new taboo lists are going to become more structured, and it's going to be when rotation happens. So we're going to get a yearly taboo list at the same time rotation happens. That is my prediction, because that is what my first AD brain says should happen. And I could be completely wrong, but that's just the thing that makes the most sense to me. My understanding is that you could just do a regular set of tarot cards. Yeah, just do all the major arcana, right? You definitely could. The details of what is current and what is legacy are not still not entirely visible to players. More details will be shared on that front soon-ish. As for what we consider while designing, up until we introduce the current different formats, we had to consider everything. We'd basically design for two different certainties. First, that these cards need to exist in a world alongside every other card released. And second, that these cards need to function with just the core set. It was not an easy task, and I welcome the change to current versus legacy to ease up some design space. Amen. Do you think it's better to apply nerfing or buffing taboos? It depends, right? I always prefer a buff to a card over nerfing it, but Arkham has some really powerful cards that end up defining the meta in pretty strong ways. Unfortunately, to create the type of environment we think is most healthy for the game, we have to rein in some things that we were excited to release. The player base will always come up with situations and use cases that we miss. Shotgun, some dialogue I really like. That's funny. The collision detected for Luke. Any chance that we visit places and campaigns in the future? This also means that all campaigns only require the source set. Will this change the new legacy format? Nothing's on the table, except for things which are very clearly off the table. I wonder what that could be. But yes, we do need to make sure that every campaign is usable only in the core set. Okay, let's end with this one, because it also looks like this is the end. Alright, I love the illustrations on the cards. Can we talk about the process of briefing the illustrator? I love to go into detail, but I'm approaching the end of my time for answering questions. We're also approaching the end of the time for the video, so this is perfect. That said, our art team is amazing. We have art directors and graphic designers for Arkham, and they've created an art brief form we, as designers, fill out for every card that needs new art. 90% of them. They then review the briefs, we chat through the concerns, and then they take their briefs. Then they take our briefs and deliver them to freelance artists. The art directors are ultimately responsible for taking our crazy ideas and translating them to a visual presentation that fits in line with the vision of the product and with the game line as a whole. It is always such a treat to see art come in for a project. Makes it feel like it's a real thing and not just a bunch of alpha testing cards. That is really cool. That's really cool. All right. That is the AMA with Nicholas Kory, game designer for Arkham Horror. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned some things, and I hope you had fun watching me going through and giving my, well, not really my thoughts, but more, it's kind of like a reaction video, but to an AMA. But it's very fun, and I learned some new things. My favorite thing I learned is that Nicholas likes Brotato. Brotato is a great game, and you should definitely play it. It's like a better Vampire Survivors, in my opinion. Did I say that? Yes. I think Vampire Survivors is good, but I think Brotato is great. So you should play Brotato. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this. It's an exciting time to be an Arkham fan. We're on a big shift of how things are going to be. And I hope this is the big shift that we'll be able to look back at and be like, this was a very nice turning point for Arkham Horror from going on forward. And I'm excited to you know, talk all about it when it does come. But in the meantime, we'll have more videos for you at Playing Board Games. If you want to support this, you can do so by liking, commenting, subscribing. If you want to go above and beyond and help me do this full-time, even more full-time than I'm doing this right now, you can join all these awesome names in the Patreon down below. In the meantime, thank you for watching, everybody. Have a good one, and as always, GG's.